Hello and a very warm welcome to our STACS 2024 Virtual Festival. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Monday. My name is Ian Neal and I'm a computing science teacher at Beeslack Community High School in Midlothian. I've also delivered the Higher Computing Science eSchool supported study for the past 3 years, and before that I've done the National 5 programme, and I'm a STACS tutor. This evening I'm joined by Nicole. Hi Nicole.
Hello, Ian. Hello. I'm Nicole Giorgi. Thank you for having me tonight. I've been a software developer for about 10 years, and then now I've just finished my PhD. I'm so looking forward to join the team of the wonderful computing science teachers in Scotland at Formative High School in August. I would like to say thank you to the STACS team. Thank you, Ian, as well.
I know you're a very good mentor for your last placement.
Yes, I did have a very good mentor for my last placement year. Thank you again. Anyway, I would like to also say thank you to all the STACS team for having me tonight, because it's great to have to be able to give back and help even before starting my probation year. On to tonight's event, we're going to have 3 great speakers on tonight. First of all, we're going to hear from Laura Di Pasquale, who is a primary teacher in Glasgow, and she's going to tell us about how to use AI to create some very engaging quizzes for all our learners. And next up, we're going to have Peter Marshman, who is joining us tonight to talk about coding for climate action and how to get grants to do coding for climate action activities as well. And then finally, we will hear from Morag and her extensive SQA experience and how to write Prelim questions. So really looking forward to tonight's speakers. First of all, though, we're going to share a message from Pam Duncan-Glancy, Minister for the Scottish Parliament, Shadow Cabinet Education Secretary, specifically in the Scottish Parliament.
My name is Pam Duncan-Glancy and I'm the Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Education representing Scottish Labour. I'm delighted to be able to speak with you, if not in person, but virtually today, to first of all say thank you for everything that you are doing to promote the study of computing science in our schools and beyond. We need more support for computing science teachers, we need more computing science teachers, and we need an understanding all the way through the school system, from arguably early years all the way through to the end of high school and beyond into college and university, so that people understand why computing science is important, not just for computing science's sake, but actually for the sake of building our future economy and facing the challenges that we have as a society, both in terms of health and social care and indeed climate change. That's why I'm really passionate about ensuring we've got a strong focus on computing science in schools, more teachers to support the development of that in schools, and an understanding and inspiration for young people in our schools so that they can see the value in computing science for them. I think it's also important to mention that we need to do that particularly with attention to girls and women, because we know that we need to address some of the gender imbalances in this too, and the work that you guys are doing on a daily basis to try and do that is commendable. So I want to say thank you. We in Scottish Labour value your profession and we value your passion and commitment, and indeed we share it to promote computing science as a subject and as a career in Scotland going forward. Thank you.
So thanks for that message, Pam. I think it's great that we've got some politicians in the Scottish Parliament behind this computing science, because we know it's important, we know the value of it. So it's really good that the Education Committee are on the same journey with us and want computing science to be accessible, because they can see the impact that it will have on the future economy and things like that. So it's really good that they're all behind us. So let's get into tonight's first session. So I'm going to welcome Laura, who, as we said, is a primary teacher in Glasgow. She's a digital coordinator, an Apple learning coach, and a microbit champion as well. It's good to have you here.
Nice to be back again this year.
I know. I noticed that I was looking through and preparing and seeing that last year you were sharing about microbits, and this year you're sharing about AI. And you were at the STACS event at JP Morgan, where you gave us a whirlwind tour with Amanda about everything AI.
It was so nice to be invited and to be able to represent the primary sector as well, and to just meet people that I knew from online and share the knowledge. And I think a lot of the secondary staff were really interested and engaged, and really delighted to hear from the primary perspective and helping transitions to secondary. So hopefully we can inspire some people.
Exactly, all that the transition stuff and all that. So before we go into Laura's session, if you've got any questions, some of you have already found the comment section. So pop in your comments, and then towards the end of the session, we'll kind of pull some of the questions and we will fire them to Laura. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so my session today is all about Qwizziz. If anybody was at the STACS conference, you will have heard me talking about it then. Just want to give some insight all about it. Feel free to connect on social media as well if you have any questions or just want any support or anything. Okay, so with Qwizziz app, if you have 5 teachers at your school signed up, you get the free lifetime access to the paid version. You can use your Google account or your Gmail, whatever, your school account, and it's pretty easy to sign up for. Okay, so getting started with what is Qwizziz? So Qwizziz is a fantastic teaching program. It allows you to be able to deliver instructions that are really relevant for students with a boost from AI. And it is super fast. If anybody hasn't used it before, it literally creates resources and quizzes for you within seconds. It allows you to plan engaging yet vigorous quizzes in a matter of minutes for any grade level or subject, so suitable for primary and secondary colleagues. So here is a little 30-second video about what is Qwizziz. Hopefully you can hear the sound. Possibly not going to play for me. Try once more. Not to worry. Okay. So I'm going to go through some of the things, the most recent additions to Qwizziz to help you in your classroom. So one of the things I find most useful is there is a Qwizziz lessons extension, or an add-on for Google Slides. I use Google Slides for creating all my resources, so having this was a lifesaver. Also, if you have any PowerPoint presentations that you can insert into Google Slides, it will turn this into a lesson for you within seconds without ever having to leave the slides. Okay. So there was lots of videos that are supposed to be playing within this, but I'll share the link to this presentation in the chat at the end, because there are loads of links within it for how-to videos and stuff that you can use later. Also, Qwizziz AI allows you to digitize your curriculum resources in seconds. Even if you have an image of something, taking a picture, maybe you have a worksheet that you've created in your classroom, seems a bit outdated and not very exciting. Take a picture of it, upload it into Qwizziz, and it'll create a really interactive and engaging quiz for your pupils. Same with textbooks, and I've seen this quite a lot in secondary schools recently, is taking pictures of the exam papers. So obviously this time of year when it's exam time and you're coming to the end of your year, it can be pretty hard to keep the kids engaged and focused, especially when having to do exam papers. So turning those into a much more engaging quiz can definitely make your life a bit more exciting in the classroom. Same with PDFs or any kind of documents that you have. Turning PDFs, there are two options when you upload your PDF. You can have it where the children can read the PDF at the same time as the questions beside it, or they read the PDF first and then they do their quiz afterwards. Depends what you're looking for. Maybe if it's a particularly long PDF or a long Word document, you may wish to have that there so the pupils can refer back to it. Thinking about maybe if you're doing like English in secondary schools, and obviously pupils would have the text there with them and doing comprehension questions at the same time. This is my personal favorite, is transforming videos. So any YouTube video that has closed captions, which apparently they almost all do, I didn't realize that. You literally just take your URL, pop it into Qwizziz, and within 45 seconds, it creates an interactive quiz for you. And again, just like the PDF, you can do this both ways. Maybe the pupils, maybe you're watching the video as a class together. I know I like to do that because we don't have headphones and things in our classroom. So maybe as a whole class, you're watching the video together, and then the kids are going off in teams or on their own and answering the questions. Or the second option is you can have the video there playing for you. So maybe it'll play a short section of the video, and then there is a quiz question to go with it. This is also ideal for independent practice. Maybe you've got a YouTube video on how to do long multiplication, and you maybe want to assign that to a couple of pupils in your class to help them. This is also quite new to Qwizziz, our little Qbits. So they're like avatars for your classroom. The kids in my class absolutely love these, and I've spoken to secondary colleagues, and they actually love to use them too. So we avatar for the kids. There's little clothes and hats and scarves that you can put on them, and it just helps them to be a wee bit more creative and representing themselves within the quizzes. And again, as you'll see on the slide, it says, learn more here. I'll share this presentation, and you can click on all the links to learn more. For if you've maybe used clickers or that before, you maybe kind of recognize something very similar here. So this allows you to access Qwizziz if you don't have a device. Now, I'm in Glasgow, and we're very lucky to have a significant number of iPads. So we do have access to devices, but I know not all councils are the same. So you're kind of printing out your cue cards and distributing them to pupils. Oh, I'm glad someone says that the kids like their the Qbits. I like making mine as well, to be fair. Starting the quiz on your computer, and the kids are answering the questions in this way. Now, something new as well is accommodations, or kind of differentiation, I suppose I would call it, within Qwizziz to help meet the needs of all learners. So this helps to ensure that technology is really accessible and compliant for the learners. It can reduce kind of a lot of the barriers that are there for pupils, and allows you to be quite flexible. And there are loads of different accommodations within Qwizziz, and I'll be going through some of them. Okay. So if you have your class set up within Qwizziz, you could assign the same quiz to the whole class, but you may have different things built in. So maybe you've got Jane and Mark over in the corner who you think maybe might need extra time for their questions. You have a child that has just come from Spain and they want to do their quiz in Spanish. You have Read Aloud, there's Dyslexia Font, and also one I quite like is participant attempts. So maybe having more than one chance to answer a question, or a redemption question, like you didn't get it wrong, try doing the question again. And you can also reduce answer choices. So maybe for some pupils in the class, maybe there's 4 answers to it, and in other kids, maybe they've just got 2 or 3 possible answers for their question. Now, game changer, obviously this is Qwizziz AI. So this is creating a quiz based, obviously using AI. So you're just typing into it, create me a quiz, for example, here on photosynthesis, and it will generate the quiz for you. You can then change the questions and up-level the questions, and I'll go through all different things you can do it. But again, it's literally creating things in seconds for you. It's super fast. So when you have created your quiz, you can then enhance your quiz. You can, use it to fix grammatical errors. The one I quite like is add answer explanation. So maybe if the child has got the question wrong, you can then have typed in kind of what the correct answer was and why. Maybe particularly useful in secondary, maybe even more so when you're doing maybe your exam papers and things, and giving kind of answers as to why it was or was not the correct question. So plenty you can do to support your students and add in your creativity to make it fun. And I have used this in my classroom and it is so fun. The kids are out of their seats. They're 8 years of age. They're primary 3, maybe not the same in secondary, but they're out of their seats. They're jumping up and down. You've got like the live leaderboard up on your screen. It tells you if you've got the answer right or not, and they're screaming and they're buzzing for it. So when you've created your quiz, you can then use it to add similar questions, translate it into other languages. I was trying to look up today. I think there was maybe 7 or 8 languages that it was translating your quiz directly into. So hopefully, maybe you might use some of those in your classroom. You can convert the questions to real-world scenarios. So especially if you're you're thinking about maybe it's a quiz to do with multiplication, but you want to make this bit more relevant to the children actually applying their knowledge to real-world questions. You could simplify the questions. You may have one quiz for one group and then kind of copy your quiz and simplify it maybe for another group in your class. You can add the student's name into questions, make it fun. Yeah, so here are the kind of the 2 favorites is translating into another language and making it sound like. So if you have like you're doing a quiz about Doctor Who, and you could say, make these questions sound like Doctor Who has written them. Or you're doing a quiz on Romeo and Juliet, make the questions sound like they have been written by Shakespeare. Or if maybe you're studying somebody in school, you're Taylor Swift at the minute, I'm thinking about make it sound like Taylor Swift has written these questions. And it is quite fun the way it comes up with the different ideas. So asking students what they want to know in multiple ways. So they can answer the question with like an image, gifts, or text. And the gifts are quite fun. And especially if anybody out here makes their own gifts, just makes it a bit more exciting. And kids love using gifts, and we create them, and I create them in my class all the time with the iPads. This is one of my personal favorites, is flashcards. So for example, you have created a quiz on subtraction within 100. Okay, it creates the quiz for you. You can then turn the questions into flashcards. So maybe on one side of the flashcard it says 40, take away 10. The child maybe thinks of the answer, clicks on it, it flips around, and it gives you the answer on the other side. This is really helpful if you've maybe created a quiz and maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do this quiz on Friday to assess how much they have learned about subtraction from 10. But you may have a couple of kids that you may wish to give the flashcards to before the quiz to give them a chance to practice. Or after the quiz, you realize maybe there was a small group of children in your class that found it really difficult, didn't get any of the answers correct. They can then use the flashcards for studying themselves. Someone's asking about your account. I just use my Gmail account to set up my quizzes, and you just clicked on what school I was in, and that seemed to be fine. Okay. So allow students to see why they got their answer wrong. And that, I've mentioned that already about they've clicked the answer as wrong, and then you give them an explanation about it. And again, you can do that with a video, a picture, or text. If you maybe have a small quiz and maybe it's about a quiz on photosynthesis or the parts of a volcano, and they've got the question wrong, you may want to like give them a link to a YouTube video that would help to explain it for them correctly. Okay. So in the next slide, I'll show you some of the different types of questions that you can use within quizzes, and they're really quite nice. Now, it's supposed to be all interactive videos, and I don't think it'll show up here, but again, I'll share it to you in the chat afterwards. Okay, so already mentioned about the using videos. So again, there are 2 ways. You can have the video there beside you and you're watching while you're answering questions, or you're just watching the video separately, but it allows that kind of for independent practice. Maybe you have a video to do with phonics. and the children then are doing the questions by themselves. You can allow students to categorize anything. So for example, here, this is classifying the options into is it a fruit or a vegetable? And the children drag and drop them into the correct place. The students can visualize their voice in real time during brainstorming. So a word cloud, which I know lots of people use it, especially like staff meetings and things like that. So again, maybe you've asked the whole class a question, the kids are typing in their one-word answer and up creates your word cloud. So maybe, what is the best thing we have learned today in class? And up pops all the kids' different choices. And it's quite visual and effective, especially if you have a smart board in your classroom where you're displaying this in front of all the kids. You can, the children can draw within it and label things on it. Maybe here, marking the correct positions of the atriums. Maybe you're learning about, I don't know, parts of a leaf, parts of a bridge. Or my son at the minute is doing parts of a volcano downstairs for a presentation tomorrow that we haven't done yet. Again, drag and drop labeling, a bit like the previous one. Drag and drop them into the right part. Ideal for like maybe maps, maybe labeling famous places in Glasgow. Can you put them in the right place? Can you label the mountains within Scotland, the main cities within Scotland? This is quite a cute one, especially if you have wee ones, is a drawing task. So for example, here it's draw a leaf, but it could be just draw yourself on a sunny day. Yeah. And obviously you get up through secondary. If you have opportunities maybe with stylists and stuff, you can make it a bit more challenging, or you could have a map on it and you say to the children, okay, you have to find Glasgow on the map. You have to find Edinburgh on the map, or Fife. Students also have the ability to plot a range of mathematical relationships on graphs and automatically graded for them as well. Like all your quizzes are all graded and you can get feedback from them and download your scores. And here, finally, I'll share this as well with you. There's you basically click on all these things and it gives you a how-to guide and how to do all these different things within quizzes. After this, there are a couple of quite good courses. So the Qwizziz PD Hub, it's all very American. We got the Qwizziz University. There are learning paths. So each learning kind of course comes with a little badge, which I quite like earning a badge. There's on-demand resources. There's loads of catalogs, PD resources. You can register for live learning events. There's one tomorrow, 18th of June, on using quizzes with Canva and how they both kind of amalgamating the two together to make it even kind of more accessible and easier, especially if any of you, I don't use Canva a lot myself, but if you're somebody who uses Canva, ideal putting the two together. Okay. After learning this, there are two courses that you can do. They don't take particularly long. The Game Changer one is really handy. So basically, it's just like you're within the Qwizziz app and it will guide you through how to do every single thing I've just told you. For example, it's a tutorial on how to create a quiz using AI, how to create a quiz using YouTube URL. And it literally takes you through step by step, every single thing. It's really interactive. And at the end, you get a little badge. And then there's also the Qwizziz AI one as well. You get your wee badge to share on Twitter for that afterwards. And that is all from me. And if there are any questions, and feel free, obviously, to catch up with me or Twitter or anything. And also, if you follow Qwizziz on Twitter, they do a lot of opportunities for winning swag. So that's always a huge benefit.
That was intense. That was a very speedy. And I've got loads of notes going, oh, I could do this with, you know, the idea of taking a bit of the National 5 course specification, dropping it into Qwizziz and getting questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've done that before with other AI platforms, but then you've got to put them into your question. But the fact that Qwizziz does it all is brilliant.
And it's very, like, even if you're, like, I've been in restaurants and taking pictures of the menu and uploading that to make a quiz for myself. And it's like, you know, which ingredient was in the hummus and stuff. But ideal, like if you've got anything in your classroom or like a picture of a train timetable or the bus timetable, anything around you can be turned into a quiz. pretty quickly.
There's a lot of love in the chat for Qwizziz.
Good.
I
I
know
love myself.
a few Qwizziz users. Got a wee question from Anna. Does it keep a tracking system?
Yes. So if you set up your class, now you do need to be careful with data and things. I know in Glasgow we are getting the app onto our devices, but you could set it up with just initials for the kids, or maybe imagine pupil 1, pupil 2. If you keep a record, it stores it all for you. It stores all the scores. You can download them. You know, it creates a whole lot of assessment data. It tells you afterwards what the pupils need to work on, which area they're missing, what questions kids were getting wrong. It tells you everything. I don't know, and it keeps it all for you, and it marks everything for you. So if people find it hard to keep up with assessing, especially in secondary school, you know, marking, I can imagine marking an English exam paper is slow work. This does it for you. So it's fast.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. In fact, it's got that ability to track through time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a real strength. Fantastic.
No problem.
Well, thank you very much for coming along, Lauren, giving us lots of ideas of how we can get quizzing in our classroom. I think I now need to go and get another notepad because I've got lots of ideas. So if that's from one session, who knows what will come from the rest of the evening. So thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy your summer holiday when they arrive.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. So I think next up we've got Peter Marshman, and he will be talking about coding for climate action. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the STACS Virtual Festival, Peter. It's really, really good to have you tonight.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks so much for having me. It's good.
Oh, great. I think this is your first STACS Virtual Festival. Am I right, Peter?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I wonder whether you would like to tell us a bit more about you and your background before we go into the talk and climate action.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. Yeah, I'm previously a head of computer science and assistant head teacher for secondary school for about 20 years. But now, in the last year and a half, I've set up a charity, and I also work half the week with BCS as a secondary sector lead. So unfortunately, I haven't got rid of all my A-level classes, but I'm still teaching, still in the classroom. But most of my work now is around the digital, which is a charity that I founded that I wanted to just share with you today. Just everything we do is completely free, just to just share with you some of those things.
That sounds great, Peter. So you're really busy man, it sounds. You're half the week in the classroom and then the other half with the charity Digital. You mentioned that's great work. Thank you very much. And climate action, definitely a topic that I personally am very interested to hear about, especially with our responsibility for learning for sustainability and how it's sometimes a bit difficult to put it into our lessons. Right. So before we move on into your actual talk, Peter, just a wee reminder for the audience, if you have a question, just pop it in the comments in YouTube, and then we'll pick it up at the end, and hopefully Peter will be able to answer most of them or all of them. Thank you, Peter. Over to you now.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, so hi everyone. It's a bit of a confusing charity name. So it's digital, so Digital, and our website is www.digital.charity. What I wanted to focus on today was to share with you two really key things. One of them is a number of units of work we've written for primary and secondary alongside Amazon, which is called Coding for Climate Action. And then the second thing I want to share with you was our grants program. Now, they're not directly related, so our grants are available for any sort of computing science, coding, STEM activity. And towards the end of this presentation, I'll share with you how your school can access £400, £800 or £1,200 through our grants programs, which are funded through the EU. So that'll be hopefully a useful thing to share with you as well. So just a little bit about the charity, because we are really new and you might not have heard of us before. We're a registered UK charity. We are home of EU Code Week in the UK, so I'm the Code Week ambassador, which means I get the pleasure of going to Brussels a number of times a year and hearing from all the great work from all of the European code ambassadors, which is really great for me because I get to really find out the best practice, things are working across Europe, and try to see if we can bring some of those ideas back to the UK as well. My background is all around engaging girls in computer science. I was very lucky to be at a school that had the highest uptake of girls for GCSE and A level for 4 years, as a state school, not as a private school, but as a state school. And in the last 2 years, we've just reached 200,000 young people at the charity. It's a bit of a benchmark for us, and a lot of that has been through this particular program called Coding for Climate Action. Just a couple of things to talk to you about as well on the website, which is digital.charity with 2 L's. We also have professional development as well, and we have resources that are all free to download, free to access online training. So there's basically, you can go and browse and have a look around. But what I wanted to focus on was coding for climate action. So obviously, climate action is a big kind of focus, a big topic of real importance to young people. And what we've decided to do is to create 2 things, not only a scheme of work, but also an hour of code activity. So if you want to just kind of dip your toe in the water, you can do an hour of code activity. If you want to go full in, we have a 7-lesson unit of work for sort of P6, P7 pupils, or you can, we also have a secondary one as well for sort of more S1, but you could use it of S2 students as well. So sort of, all the way from 9 to 12 years old, really. We've got a unit of work that's accessible and some hour of code activities as well. We decided to focus on the microbit just because part of what we do at charity is getting young people active and moving around with technology. So everything that we design or develop is with the intention of children kind of coding in and exploring out. So they will spend part of we work in communities as well as schools, but they can spend part of the time in school or in their local youth space, coding, but then going outside and actually using and prototyping and testing the technology as well. Just to share with you, I think really focusing on the photos here really. So this is really just to share with you that both our primary and secondary resources have been piloted in over 50 schools. So the resources went out for full launch to the whole of the UK in February. But prior to that, we spent a good sort of 6 months piloting the resources in 50 schools, getting lots of feedback, and you can see some of the young people working on them here. So the resources are really well tested. We like to think we've had lots of feedback, lots of changes to it, adapting resources in different formats to meet different classrooms. So it's hopefully not something that's untested and you dive in and feel disappointed with. Hopefully it's something you'll find useful. Some pictures here on the right hand side from the secondary resource. So there's a young lady there on the right hand side that's holding a microbit in the air, and that's because one of the activities in the secondary resource is actually to mimic the microbit being on a buoy in the ocean and measuring wave height. So she's using the accelerometer to measure wave height up and down, and depending on the movement of the y-axis of the microbit, on 4 or 5 occasions will send an alarm to another microbit. So all of the activities are around building an early warning system, and they can choose to do one for either earthquakes, floods, wildfires, or droughts. They're the 4. So they can shake the microbit, or they can have 3 microbits, and if they all shake, then it's a representation of epicenter activity. For an earthquake, they can move it up and down and calculate using the data log in the microbit. For wave movement, they can use the heat sensor for wildfires, and they can use the light sensor for detecting droughts. But the whole premise behind the resources is effectively radio transmitting that one microbit has detected using the sensors a potential natural hazard, and it sends a message to another microbit that then displays a warning message. And in the activities, we also go into designing accessible warning messages. So looking at hearing impaired, visually impaired. We look at children with autism or adults with autism. So we look at all of those we look at all of those different approaches. So autistic children, autistic adults, hearing and visually impaired. We also have weaved the PRIM pedagogy through the resources. So predict, run, investigate, modify, make, which you may have heard from, I'm sure, from Sue's sentence before. So all of our activities are around using a pedagogy for children learning to code, and that's threaded throughout the materials. It's probably of less relevance, but if you do use or dip into any of the Teach Computing materials, we have actually designed it so you can take out the year 5 or year 7 unit on physical computing and drop in something like this, just a little bit more creative in that aspect, and you can drop it straight into that curriculum. But likewise, you can embed it into any custom curriculum you've got. Within the activities, there are careers links, so looking at all sorts of activities, especially with looking at the skills parts of being creative, staying positive, aiming high, leadership, and teamwork. I'm not going to read these out. Obviously, you'll have access to these slides in case you want to dive in a little bit further, but we focus on all of the programming skills on the left-hand side, the control structures in the middle, and the algorithms on the right, and they're threaded through the resources. So like I say, there are 7 lesson sequence or 6 lesson sequence of a unit of work. Everything starts off with a phenomenon. I can never say that word. So we start off with a phenomenon, and then we break that down individual learning objectives, and we look at the discipline of computing and science education. So you'll find the primary resources very much across curricula between computing and science. So there's elements of both in there weaved in. Here's just a sample of how the unit of work progresses. So we start off with define the problem. We then move on to analysing solutions. So they look at existing real life early warning systems, also in developing countries. We then look at them building an early warning system, like an example. They then go through to actually design their own early warning system to solve a local problem with a partner. And then they go through kind of a presentation piece back as well. So we've got a whole kind of project-based learning feel through the projects as well. Again, I mentioned about Teach Computing, may or may not be completely relevant. You may have your own bespoke curriculum or use something completely different, but there is a mapping there if that is helpful, but I won't dwell on that for too long. We've also, in every single lesson, I highlighted the computational thinking. If you look at the top, computational spelt wrong, computational. But it's meant to say computational thinking, so we've linked the key 5 elements of that within each of the lessons, so you can have a focus on those particular problem solving skills as well. We have like a kind of a pre and a post survey. It's just like 4 or 5 questions for the pupils. If they complete that, then, and just gives us great feedback where we can keep adjusting the resources, then your school will receive a LEED School Code of Climate Action certificate. That is also provide badges for teachers who want to go through our Train the Trainer program if you're interested in using our training materials to work with others. Something else to mention is all of our training materials, we did them live originally in our immediate launch, but they are all recorded and available on our website, and also in the resource file that I'll share with you in a moment. So if you wanted to say, look at lesson 3 and you're thinking, I'm not totally sure what I do at this part, you can just go to recorded lesson and you can scroll through the lesson as to where you're going to get to. So it's there for anyone who wants to get started, anyone who's quite confident, through to anyone who just wants to look at some of the extension exercises as well. The key features really with using a microbit is the use of data logging. So that's really important through that unit. We do a lot of radio transmission because, of course, we're sensing a hazard, and then we are sending a message to another microbit to display a warning message or sound a warning message. And obviously, this is all based around real world contexts. So we have, for example, one of the examples is the Grillo system that is used, which is a real life system used where there are multiple sensors to detect the possibility of an earthquake. So we kind of relate to those and abstract those back. Here's a look at some of the resources. So there's primary at the top left, where they do some scientific experiments around precipitation and that type of thing. You can see at the top middle, they look at a tolerance for their microbit in the ocean on a wave. So they might decide that actually above that level is where the warning's going to sound. So they use data logging to set tolerances. In a secondary resource, we start off with block-based coding. We transition into MicroPython. In the primary resource, we stick with just a block-based coding altogether. Yeah, so that gives you a look into some of the resources. I don't think I can post this in the comments. I'm going to put this in the private chat. If someone could move that over, that'd be great. The link I've just given you gives you access to all the materials. They're free to use. They're in a Google Drive. So every time we make an update, it will be real time. And that website is amazonfutureengineer.co.uk/C4CA. If you want to access that. Thank you very much for dropping that in. We also have, this is so efficient. This is wonderful. We also have an hour of code resource. So if you just want to dip your toe in the water, or you want to take part in hour of code week, or you want to take part in code week, it's entirely up to you. We have a primary one that focuses on the use of detecting earthquakes with accelerometer, and a secondary one which focuses on basically coastal flooding. So it's where we've kind of compressed those lessons into a little kind of edit activity where they can get to a solution quite quickly, but make their own small modifications. So those hour of code resources are in the folders where that link's just been shared with you. So you might find you want to get involved in that, or the whole unit of work. The feedback from the pilot we've had, these are the things that have come out of it. So it's really increased the engagement of girls just through the context. And obviously we've been threading in the fuller and prim pedagogic approaches as well, which has really helped. There's lots of pair programming opportunities because of coding 2 microbits to communicate with each other. Oh, great question, Anna. In terms of the hardware, for the primary, you just need some alligator clips. That's pretty much it. And 2 microbits. And for secondary as well, you just need 2 microbits. So we've actually designed it so that schools don't need to buy anything else on top of the resources that they've got. However, saying that, if you're someone that wants to take it a little bit further than that, I'm just going to post this link in the chat. We have a whole set of resources that are kind of designed for classroom use, but could be in extracurricular activities. I've just posted, hopefully that'll come through to you in the chat, where with just paying an extra up to £4 per student, they can design a wind turbine, a solar powered Llama-Gotchi, a plant partner, or a particle tracker. So if you want to go further and connect more things to your microbit, we already have those resources available, which we developed as a response of schools saying, you know, we've done code of climate action, where can we go next? But there is that additional cost associated to it. In terms of, this is some of the feedback from the student survey. Again, you can look through this in your own time, but it's been largely positive. There are areas we'd like to develop as well that we're continuing to look at as we get more and more data through. I think we've had well over 3,700 responses, which is pretty good for what we're expecting, and just to get a good feel of how that's going. Again, there's some stuff about rating unit of work from the teachers as well that have gone through the unit. And what my role has always been, both in my EU role and UK role at BCS, is all around sort of expertise in engaging girls in computing. So we've used this kind of Venn diagram of activities to ensure we can try and, you know, really engage girls in coded climate action. So that's just a little bit of an example there. And what I want to talk to you about now is also our grants program. So you can access our grants program. I should have put all these links on the slides. I'm so apologies. You're going to get a whole load of links. Here's another link. So we have a grants program that is available to any charity or school in the UK. It's digital.charity/meet and code. And The funding window has already opened. We've already distributed 45 sets of grants already. We've only been open sort of a week or two. And what your school can do is submit a request for either £400 for 4 hours of activity, £800 for 8 hours of activity, or £1,200 for 12 hours of activity. And these activities could be, for example, you want to do coding for climate action, you need some microbits. It could be you want to run an after-school code club, but you need some funding to support the teacher running it, or to support some of the materials, or you want to bring an external agency to run some of your coding clubs. Well, you can use it for a drop-down day. You can use it for a school trip that's focused around computing. Really, it's completely endless. The only thing that you do need is you do need to have access to a charity number. So the majority of schools that apply have the charity number. If your school doesn't have a charity number, your parent teacher association or equivalent will have one, or you can just reach out to a local charity that your school works with, and you just need to put their charity number on the form. It's just because we have to pay a charity bank account. They can transfer the funds to you. The application can be made by you, but as per the EU regulations, we need to send the funds to a charity, to an NPO. So we had a huge take up on this last year. Obviously, we've only been running 2 years. The EU team have selected us to run it again this year, and we've got double the amount of grants to give out. So if you are interested in accessing those grants, please do submit a request. On that website, there is a link to Donna's email address. So Donna Robertson, she looks after this program within the digital team. Her email address is at the bottom of the page. So if you want any further advice, you can come to me, but you can go straight to Donna and she'll give you the answer directly if you're interested in those grants. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of a feel. Do have a look through the Code of Climate Action resources. On there, for example, you can see the lesson plans, you can see the slides, you can see the extended activities as well. So they're all free for you to use and access. Of course, if you do download the materials, we are constantly updating them, which is what we want to continue to do. So I would suggest you just download the latest copy, or just run it straight from the Google Drive itself, so that your pupils and students have access to the latest materials as we continue to get the feedback. So I'll stop there in case there's any questions that you would like to ask.
Thank you, Peter. It is great, and it sounds like a very empowering initiative that you are leading with your charity just now. It's great to hear about engaging girls in computing science and really learners from all backgrounds, as it sounds to me from the talk that you had. And it's great to hear about also including accessibility and talking about natural disasters and natural hazards, as you put in the talk, and outdoor learning as well. And I personally, I am curious to find out if you had any, how did the pilot schools found the outdoor learning? Did they all do it? And how easy is it to mix and match these lessons? You mentioned 6 to 7 lessons. It sounds great also to hear about the block to text and the Prelim, getting the kids to read the code first and understanding those blocks, and then you take them out. And I know there are other resources for microbit as well. So I don't know if you have any comments. Outdoor part at the end from your pilot schools, and then I'll get some of the questions from the chat.
Yeah, sure. So with our pilot schools, we've had a real mix. So we've had from schools where we've actually had ambassadors to go in and run some of the lessons with, because it's the first time they've used a microbit, so they hadn't used it at all. Mm-hmm. So we have a number of volunteers and ambassadors around the UK that we use. We've had schools where the teacher's been absolutely fine with the content and has just wanted the content to deliver it, and used our recorded lessons, which are in the resource pack on the Amazon website, and have used that to fit it in. So it's just been different for every school. Mm-hmm. I think the overall feedback is we asked some questions around like the careers element that hasn't really come out, and that wasn't really our focus, but it was something we were interested in. So the idea of engineering, digital skills, sustainability for primary, we've maybe missed a part of that. So we're looking at how we can build more careers content as part of it. But what has come out is they've really enjoyed the hands-on coding activity and having some context to it. I think one of the things they've really enjoyed is working in pairs where, you know, they're kind of coding a sensor microbit together to send a message to another microbit. And it's the fact they've been able to test it together. So that's been one of the, I think, the highlights that come out of it. But in open honesty, when we first started, there were all sorts of things about some of the tiny links we provided in the slides that some of the schools couldn't use. So a lot of it has been really just working around some of the smaller elements of the resources and just making it accessible to everyone. Yeah.
It sounds like great comments are coming in the chat as well about microbeats and about sustainability and how to, and people are looking in Scotland on how to integrate these resources as well. And the context, the importance of the context, absolutely. It makes it all very real. And it sounds like the next step is adding on to those careers. Okay, I've got the skills, I've got the context, this all matters to me. How do I turn this into a lifelong commitment, sort of? Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. And we hope to see you again at another STACS event in the future.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for having me. Cheers. Have a good evening.
So we now move on to our final session. So we're going to welcome Morag Shaw to join us. Morag, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, just hanging together. It's a lovely sunny day today, so it's been a wee surprise.
I know, a lovely sunny day as we approach the end of, well, for most of us, the end of term and the countdown, and all SK marking's nearly finished.
Well, we are finished, so I'm very, very happy about that. I could tell you, very happy.
Happy.
It was a long time coming. It seemed to go on for quite a while, but we're finished. All done. We even have a grade boundary now, so yeah.
Brilliant.
So yeah, just a report to right now.
Just waiting for the whatever of August when we see the results.
Yes, so, well, hopefully they'll be good, and they're pretty solid, you know. Yeah, yeah, pretty solid. So, yeah.
And we start the cycle. We start the cycle again with most of us having moved on.
Yeah, dates for appeals are already in. So I've got the date on my calendar. Oh, gosh.
Most of us will have started our new timetables, our new national and higher classes, and probably not thinking about prelims just yet. But
but it's always it's a little bit early, but it's always good to keep it in mind and sort of think about it when you've got a little bit of headspace without all the demands of everything else going on. Yeah, so it's nice. It's good to think about it early.
Yeah, it's one thing I've never written a full prelim, so I'm going to definitely be taking lots from this about how we go about it. So I think all we need to do is get your slides loaded up. I think Brendan's just doing some stuff in the background, and you're good to go.
Yeah, they're very unsophisticated. Yeah, I don't think I'll be teaching all those experienced teachers very much, or they'll not be learning very much new. I think an awful lot is just kind of common sense, but I guess not everyone's quite as long in the tooth as I am. So maybe there's something in there. Been around for quite a while, so loads of experience in the classroom and the PT as PT in the department, but also a lot of knowledge gained through being PA and seeing appeals come in exceptional circumstances. So that's kind of where I'm planning to go again. So yeah. Ready to make a start with? I'll go ahead.
Yep, just go for it.
Okay, so here we are. Lovely to be with you all. Writing prelim papers for NQ Computing Science. And I think the first thing we should really think about is why we're bothering. You know, why do we bother writing prelim papers? Why do we have prelim papers? Actually, never mind writing them. And I think it's important that we think about also how we use them once we do have them. So once we have this prelim paper, whether we write it ourselves, some people buy them in commercially, we really should, one of the things that we look for as an exam team when we're looking at evidence is we need to be confident that what we're looking at has been completed under the same conditions as the final exam. So exam conditions. it needs to be very carefully aligned with the course specifications, and I'll come back to that in a little moment, and a lot more detail about that. That is the biggest issue that we see as an examining team. The prelim should present students with a chance to think about their progress and to make informed, I guess, decisions about their future within the subject. It helps them see how to prepare for the upcoming exam, although it depends when you do your prelims, but it might be still a couple of months away, so there's an opportunity to refine and make those improvements. It gives us as teachers really useful feedback, very, very important summative feedback that we can use to help formulate estimate grades. Shouldn't be the only thing we take into consideration in estimate grades, but it's a really important factor in making those choices and decisions. It provides useful summative feedback for parents and carers. And what I often found was that was a feedback that they most easily could understand and get their head around. As much as I could talk about lots of other things that go on in the class and strengths and development needs, parents, it always came down to the nitty-gritty. So how did they go on in the prelim? But another thing to think about is the evidence that you may need to present to SQA should you have a candidate who has to apply through the exceptional circumstances route or later on through the appeals route. And I guess the one that's the most serious there is the exceptional circumstances. We just finished that, in fact, at the weekend there. Exceptional circumstances are used for a candidate where perhaps they were ill on the day of the exam, or they were unable to submit coursework, or there's been some incident happen during the exam, or some incident happened when we have personal circumstances just before the exam, and those have impacted on their performance, or potentially impacted. So the centre has to present prelim evidence. The project usually has already been submitted, and in our case has already been marked, but the prelim evidence is absolutely critical. So, and that's really possibly the only evidence if the candidate is unable to sit the exam that we have of. As examiners, we've never met the candidate, we don't know them, and it's the only way we can make a fair judgment on their ability within the subject. So the prelim is actually really important, and how it's structured is also very, very important. I mentioned matching the specification. It needs to match the specification in several different ways. So SQA have got the 3 course specifications, N5, higher and advanced higher. And across, it's not all gathered in one place. You have to go in and look for them across different pages of the documents. I've actually put together a couple of the documents that we will make available on STACS website. I think Brendan will keep us up to date with all of that, but there's a couple of documents where I have pulled everything together for everyone, and it maybe makes it a little bit easier, but this slide here gives you a quick summary. So for N5, most teachers will know it's a 1 hour 30 exam, and the prelim should reflect that. It's a total of 80 marks. There are 3 sections, except I've already done a copy paste, and it says section 1, section 2, section 3. There you go, section 1, section 2, and section 2. The third row should say 3. Section 1 is mandatory at all levels. Section 2 or section 3 is completed by the candidate, so they're making a choice in the exam to do the database option or the web option. Centres, when that was introduced as a COVID modification, it was then retained in the first presentation year was 2024. So that's now how we're moving things forward, that we will, for the foreseeable future, have that optionality within all our question papers. Centres are encouraged to teach the 3 options, but under exam conditions, candidates only have to show and demonstrate knowledge and understanding skills up to the mandatory software development and computer systems for N5 and higher, and either the optional database or optional web unit. At advanced higher, it's really important that teachers remember that there's integration within all 3 units. So in software development, there is mandatory integration with database, and that has been there. It's been there since the course started, since NQ Computing Science came along at advanced higher level, and it's been there throughout the modifications. It's never gone away. Within the section 2 database, there's now requirement, a mandatory integration, 2 marks worth of integration with web content. And similarly, that's reflected in the web section 3. There's a mandatory integration for candidates at advanced higher with database. And that's all very clearly outlined within the specification for the course. When we're building prelim papers and creating them, we need to keep at whatever level it is you're working at. We're needing to think about the mark balance and how we do that. And there's a little bit more detail that's often overlooked. And that is about the actual mark allocation. Buried very deep in this course specifications, there is a table in each of them telling teachers, candidates, anyone who wants to read the document, because it's an open public document, how the marks are allocated for the different skills within the course. So our course is primarily analysis, design, implementation, testing, and evaluating computing solutions, be they software development ones, database ones, web ones, or advanced higher integrated ones. And of course, the N5 and higher, we've also got computer systems in there. And the marks, the allocation of marks is clearly defined within the specifications. And one of the biggest issues we see as an advanced higher exam team when we're looking at prelim papers submitted by centres is often the imbalance of questions. We often see predominantly question papers that are predominantly in implementation, and when you actually look at the mark allocation, so for example, this is N5 and higher, we're looking at around about 30 marks in the question paper for design and 25 marks for implementation. So we're looking, and that's because the assignment is the flip side of that. The assignment has many, many more marks for implementation than it has for design. So the question paper has to balance that out. And that's often an issue when you're looking at question papers. It's actually really difficult to come up with design questions, so it's quite a challenge. At advanced higher, the breakdown is similar, but different. At advanced higher, again, the design marks, in fact, the design marks have flipped the other way. It's around about 20 marks we'd be looking for in a question paper, as opposed to 24 implementation. So they're not quite equal, but they're very, very similar. And of course, there's no computer systems there. What is, just as a reminder, what is important in an advanced higher question paper now is that there's those two marks of integration in both of the optional sections. Okay, so that's about the different types of content. Another requirement of all the prelim papers and question papers that we produce as a team is the question demand. Each question paper has a mixture of questions. And SQE are particularly interested in the C mark questions and the A mark questions, and that's because we set a grade boundary for a C, we set a grade boundary for an A, and we set a grade boundary for an upper A. The B boundary is halfway between the A and the C. We don't set a grade boundary for B. It's just is calculated automatically. So SQA as an organisation are interested in the C boundaries and the A boundaries, and therefore as question paper writers we are tasked with making sure that we have got 50% of the question paper is targeted at C marks, 30% in the next slide you'll see is targeted at A. So what makes a C mark question? A C mark question, sure, it's one of those questions that doesn't necessarily run to part G and H and so on and so on. They're usually quite familiar contexts. There's nothing very complex about them. Teachers will recognise a C question when you see a C question. They're very short, they're very focused, they're very direct. There's not a lot of problem solving within them. And 50% of a question paper should be at C level, as opposed to your A-level questions. And your A-level questions, there should be about 30% of your question paper. So these are the ones that are much more challenging, that as experienced exam writers, we feel when we have to mark up which of our questions are C questions and which ones are A questions. the ones that we mark up as A are the ones that we think only the A candidates will achieve. So not every candidate will achieve a mark in that question or full marks in that question, but the expectation is that the very high attaining candidates will be attaining marks in those questions. They are more challenging. They are usually context-based, so it's one of those. Another way to spot them is they're longer. There's several parts to the question. It breaks down as a stem, and the stem is continued. The theme continues. So there are multiple parts. The responses required are often longer, more detailed, a lot more descriptive, or in our subject, there's a lot more problem solving within those. So maybe that's when in higher, for example, you would be expected to see things like a design of an algorithm required, or a slight chunk of coding required, more than a one-line piece of code. There's often, certainly at advanced higher level, there's often an opportunity to integrate skills. And demonstrate deeper knowledge and understanding by providing explanations rather than simple state describe. And that should be 30% of the exam. And combined with those two factors, the demand that we're thinking about just now, combined with the split of content across the different skills of analysis, design, implementation, testing, and evaluation, those two factors play off against one another, and trying to get the balance is actually very, very difficult. And it's one of the things that we do have to look at when we're looking at appeal evidence that comes in. And last weekend, when we were looking at exceptional circumstances evidence. What we do as an exam team, or one of the things I do, the PA certainly has to do, is to track where all our different content is coming from, so that I make sure I keep a running total of where our marks are, and I can see very quickly where I've got gaps, where I haven't covered content, where I'm duplicating content, that sort of thing. So I use sophisticated Excel. I use Excel. We keep track of each question. So question 1A, and this analysis here is actually of a higher prelim paper, which I made from scratch, which will be available to download with all of the other documentation that comes with it, and is valid. It matches this requirements, it matches the demand, it's got all the different content, all of those things. And to make sure, when I was writing the paper just over the weekend, I was sitting tracking where it was. So question 1A is computer systems, 2 bits, 1 mark, and it's 1 C mark. Question 1, having to look very closely, question 1B is a 2-mark computer systems question, and they're both 2 C marks. And you unfortunately have hidden this, but as you go down, not all the questions transfer over to C marks. Some of them split, and maybe there's 1 A mark question in it. Or in some of your bigger questions, when there's maybe 6 marks available, maybe I've only got 3 of those as an A. But maybe there's a really straightforward mark in there, and I've marked 1 of those 6 against a C. So you get a feel for it when you look for the. I use a spreadsheet when we're sitting as an exam team writing question papers. I sit after we've had a discussion of all the questions. I sit and then keep a tally of the ones. Where are we? What do we need to do? And you can see on the right hand side here that I can see my totals, and I know if I'm too many of one or too few of another. An analysis grid. There you go. Marking instructions. For many teachers in very small departments, they propose if you're on your own and you're the sole teacher, you might not see the importance of committing the marking instructions to a bit of paper until it comes to submitting an appeal. Or the worst case scenario, a candidate unfortunately isn't able to sit the exam and you've got to submit something. So it's always good to do it at the time rather than after the event and try and scrabble about thinking, what did I mark this? How did I mark that? You're much better to do it at the time. So running in Parlour, when I set the writers a task and say, okay, I want you to write me a question on object-oriented, I also ask them, as you're doing it, could you go along and put all the answers in as well, so that we can, when we sit to look at the question, we can see how those 4 marks have been allocated. Have they been allocated fairly, appropriately, that sort of thing. One important thing to remember in the marking instructions, particularly for higher and advanced higher, is we can't, as writers, you can't award a mark for content at a lower level. So put that into context. In advanced higher, for example, in database work, I can't award marks for the use of an aggregate function because that's a higher skill. I can only award marks in advanced higher for advanced higher skills, so the demonstration of advanced higher skills. And that makes it very difficult in programming, particularly in software development, because, for example, fixed loops are taught at N5. I can't award marks for fixed loops, but I need a fixed loop to to do a sort. So yeah, it's actually very, very difficult. So the marking instructions are actually important. Obviously, the correct answers are there. We, as exam teams, usually publish the answer, certainly at advanced higher, I always do it, publish the answers using SQL reference language. Within your own department, you may wish to keep all implementation within the language that you use. That's fine. That's okay. And we, as exam teams, are happy to see that. It makes not one jot of difference to us whether you're using the reference language as your sample answers or whether you're using your own language. Is BOD acceptable marking for the prelim? BOD. Go on, tell me. Someone will need to explain. Yeah, good. Someone will get back to me on that one. Yeah, so make sure the correct answers are there. Explain, show, state somehow how you're allocating the marks, particularly if there's something like 4 marks, 3 marks. How are you allocating? Award 1 mark for this or 2 marks for that. Explain how you're doing it, because another factor that we do look at, it sounds really painful when we're sitting doing appeals, when we're doing exceptional circumstances. Do we actually look at the answers the candidates write? Yes, we do. And we look at the marking instructions and we check that there is actually consistency and that the marking instructions have been applied appropriately. So we do that checking. And in larger departments where there's more than one member of staff, it's absolutely vital. You need marking instructions so that everyone's applying the same standards. And of course, within a bigger department, you would probably want to cross-mark as well, just to make sure that everything was okay. I'll catch up a little bit on comments. What is BOD? Okay. So have I missed anything? Right, so yeah, marking instructions need to be there. I've lost my place. There we go. Yeah, okay, I'll come back to it. I will pick up that question about the buying about buying the prelim papers in a little moment. So we've now got a prelim paper that's valid because it follows the specification in terms of demand, in terms of content. It's got the correct split of marks. It's been done under exam conditions, all of the above, and you've now got it marked, and it's now gone back to pupils. And it's really important that you're following it through. And I'm now teaching my grand to really suck eggs because I'm sure this is things that all the good teachers in computer science are doing all the time. But we certainly used to do it. My third task, prelim paper, marking instructions, and then it's actually quite quick to do the review once you've got a grid in place. You just go down so that when we're going over the prelims, we used to give the kids a review paper and ask them to record their marks, and we'd give them sort of 10, 15 minutes at the end to actually sort of go down and almost traffic light it if you think it's appropriate, somehow write in their level of confidence. What do you think about that? Where's your areas of development? Where did they see their areas of development and following it up with the next steps? And teachers would add a comment at the bottom, and that went home so parents could, join in as well. Yeah, and where they were fully aware of what was going on. So question paper review at the end we found very useful, especially that chance to sit down and talk to the kids, because it then informed us a little bit about where we were heading with revision for final exam, what we needed to maybe do a little bit more of, or where we could say, right, I don't actually need to do that at all because they've actually really got that. They've totally nailed that one. So question paper review was actually really useful. And again, this question paper review you can see in front of you is the one that matches the higher prelim paper that I've made available for Brendan to upload once they work out how to upload it. Because the other thing is, of course, the question with the prelim papers is we can't put them on a public open site, because then kids can get access to them, and we can't then accept it as SQA evidence for appeals or exceptional circumstances. Regulations and tape and all the rest, red tape and all the rest of it. Let me take on some of these questions at the moment. So somebody's going to get back to us with BOD. Buying the prelim paper given advantage to the appeal process. Not necessarily, no. Generally speaking, no, it doesn't give any advantage whatsoever. We are quite happy to see, in fact, when we see a unique prelim paper, something that's not commercial, it's actually nice to think that the staff, the department, the teachers actually taking time to and that show that understanding of the course structure and the assessment structure. Buying in commercial ones gives no advantage whatsoever. In actual fact, I often, as a teacher, as a PT, I would buy in commercial papers and then rewrite them because I'm too critical of what was already there. So yeah, I would just rewrite them. Sometimes I would use them for ideas, and I'll come back to that about where you get your ideas from and all that sort of thing. But I would use them for ideas and then write valid questions on top of them. But I would generally say no, it doesn't give any advantage buying a commercial one. Benefit of doubt, okay, benefit of doubt marking for prelim. Benefit of doubt is an acceptable way to mark a paper. Generally speaking, I would say no. What I would do when I was marking prelim papers is I would just mark, and if it's not right, it's not right. Maybe once on one or two weird occasions, I would maybe give a benefit of doubt, but I would generally say no. And that the prelim isn't the. And one thing I think teachers often feel almost obliged to is teach to a prelim, which is always bad because you can see it through the class results, and also try and encourage pupils that getting a high mark is important. It's not necessarily the best learning experience. I think it's a more appropriate learning experience to say, no, they were wrong on that occasion, and then sit with a review and talk to them about why it was wrong and why they were near, but they weren't there. So I would generally say avoid benefit of doubt, except for those one or two. We have difficulty at advanced higher. So if you've looked at any of the advanced higher papers, the last question in section 1 is always a big problem solving question where it's an unseen problem and we're asking the candidates to come up with a solution for something that they've probably never thought about before. So it's really demanding, very high order, and we come up. It's wonderful reading all their solutions, but it's really difficult to mark. But the bottom line is we have to mark and we have to be consistent, and we have to be consistent across 700 candidates. So we can't use benefit of doubt. And I would therefore say for your prelim, even though you've only got one candidate or 20 candidates or 40 candidates or 6, benefit of doubt, no, I would avoid it. Sorry, I've already answered them. I should have read that. So coming back to where we are, priorities when you're making a paper. What I always get with the exam team is we start with the big questions, the A questions. Start with those big long ones. So in each topic, start with your big, like your software development, start with your 2 big software development questions, start with your big web question, start with your big database question, whichever your optional topic is, start with those ones. And then think about where it's going to go. You can use SQA past papers, not in their entirety. And I hinted at that earlier when I said that because they're in public domain, we cannot accept as evidence anything that is an entire paper. It's rejected straight away. So you can take questions from a series of papers, a couple of past papers. You could take them from it and say that I want to use that question. You could take the STEM. In database, you could take the data tables, for example, so because there's a lot of work has to go into that. So you could take part of a question, a software development question in its entirety, a big long one, but not the whole paper. And of course, alternatively, you can be totally creative, take inspiration from national events that are going on, like there's a certain football competition going on, there's a certain international sporting competition going on in the summer of 2024 in Paris. Take advantage of those and build questions around them. There's lots of leeway for doing that sort of thing. Your easier C questions you will find it easy to fit those in, so don't be tempted to start with C's. Always start with the big long ones. And by the way, a big long one doesn't always have to be full of A's. It could have some A's, but it's bound to have C's in it as well. Do keep track of where you are. Use that analysis grid, something like that, so that you can keep track of how many marks you've allocated, where you've allocated the mark, what type of mark is it? Is it a design mark as opposed to a testing mark? You need to keep a track of all of those things, and don't forget to create a set of marking instructions. So I've come to the end of everything I was going to say, and now I can answer the questions, which I haven't already answered. If I've got any more questions, I've answered them all. I speak too fast as well. So anyone from the STACS team or questions to ask?
I think as you said, you've answered all the questions that have been in, and I think it's just that reminder of what an exam paper looks like is really useful. And I think that one thing you talk about the feedback, I always give my students feedback, but they always get that thing of, as you're talking it through, you can see they're not actually listening to what I'm saying because they've got that result on the bit of paper. So what I did with my higher class this year is I photocopied the prelim.
Yes.
Gave them the photocopy unmarked.
Okay. Yes. To go through it. Yeah.
So they had to listen to the feedback to work out where they got the marks.
Yes.
And then I gave them my mark copy, and that's when we had the bit of debate of why have you given me the mark or not given me the mark. But
yeah, I used to give them and it was easier. It's okay at advanced higher, but I used to give them the question paper back without their answer grids.
Yep.
So that they actually were listening to me as I was going through, particularly those problem-solving questions, those deeper ones when they're just like zoned out. I would give them just the question. It's harder now because they've got the write-on papers and no one's got the budget to have two copies for every candidate. So that's a little bit harder, keeping their attention as you're doing it, because all they want to do is get to the bottom of it. So they open it up, they've got their marks straight away. Yeah. Yes.
All positive feedback in the chat, as we can see. And I think it's just that clarity around the process of looking at all the different components of how to pull it together. Yeah. And as you've made clear, it's not an easy process.
It's not an easy process, no, and don't get us wrong. We don't sit down and say, right, from the outset, you come up with a question and you're sitting going, okay, I'm going to write a question on the Olympics, so that'll lend itself to database with web, and you got all these things. So I'm going to write a question on that. I'm going to do this. and you go off, and you don't sit and go, I'm going to write 2 marks of evaluation. We would do that after the big question, and we've got gaps. Mm-hmm. Like if we've got that and say, okay, so now I'm missing evaluation, or I've got no mod in if it's high or something. But I'm missing it at that point, rather than starting and saying, trying to fit everybody into a box. I'll just give a topic to be like, you go off and do an OO question, you go off and do that, that sort of thing. And then when everybody brings it back to the table, we'll sit and analyse. So where's our gaps, where's our duplication, strip it back, and then fit in the C's round about. But it's not easy, and it's my job is I get the boring job of sitting doing the tally marks and where everybody is and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So hopefully it's useful. And what I've passed to Brendan is a full higher paper with marking instructions, with an analysis grid, and with a review. So I did it for higher, so there's a higher one there.
Well, maybe the as a group, people in STACS, we might even try the same for a National 5 one. And then we've got that STACS prelim as an alternative that people can use.
Exactly. And there's talent within a team of STACS, so there's loads of talent around. So absolutely, yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, hopefully that was useful for somebody.
I think it was definitely useful.
I think we're getting a lot of comments in the chat about demystifying the black box and certainly starting as a probationer, I think it was great to, in less than half an hour, have the actual truth on all of those massive documents that are publicly available that you have to read through and then remember. So that's absolutely great. And great idea, Ian, about like making a STACS prelim, because then we've got a bigger team, certainly bigger than Pennycook High School when it's going to be just me. So
there's always a lot of chat and STACS about computing teachers in particular, always having to reinvent the wheel and do things again and again. But actually, we don't have to do that. We've got a huge body of knowledge amongst and experience and talent, so we should make use of it and share that workload and come up with valid question papers and a wee body of them that then allows people to sort of do the best for our candidates, which is all we want, really.
Absolutely. Sounds incredibly exciting. And Morag also having the example, like the full hire example of how to, and the story of how this is built in real life. It's great. Ian, your idea is being picked up, going up into something new.
Oh, I imagine the connected group will be going off once we're all finished here.
They were starting a question.
That's the purpose of the connected spaces, so that we can all get together and start those conversations about prelims and events and resources and all stuff like that. And as Anna has popped into the chat, it'll lighten the load, for small departments. It's not feasible to write a prelim every single year or every couple of years. So yeah.
We used to get together as an authority and try and do it, and it worked for a couple of years, but then somebody needs to sustain it. And it was always me. I just felt like the nag all the time, the big dragon. So it's quite nice if there's another dragon. Brendan could be the dragon, and then I can just be creative.
No, I think
it's good though. It's good that we share.
Yes, I think that's one of the best things about STACS is that we are all for sharing. And I would encourage, and we know the Computing Science Scotland Google Drive as well. People put stuff up, and we're just share it. Somebody will use it, and
absolutely.
It'll benefit the kids, and that's ultimately
what it's all about, isn't it? Yes. It'll benefit teachers as well, because we're not then having to
reinvent that wheel.
It's so much easier to tweak something and make it more personalize it than it is to start from scratch. Much easier to do it that way. So good.
Well, thank you very much, Morag.
No problem. Been good to be part of it, and
I know.
Hopefully it's been useful. Enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's definitely been useful. Definitely.
Okay, well, nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. And Nicole, I think that brings us to the end of day one.
Yeah, it does bring us to the end of day one. Such a pity. I wanted to stay on another hour or something. Anyway, really good. And should I just take this absolutely will lighten the load comment from Anna in the chat to say, look at us, we're using technology, like we're leading the way and using YouTube and using our new brand social network, STACS Connected. Can I call it a social network? Is it a social network?
I think it is a social network. It's a community of computing science teachers.
Exactly. I'm sure
there's a collective noun for computing scientists, but I don't know what it is.
Maybe we'll see. But we've got our own special space, and look at us. And we're gonna be able to do so much more all together, I guess. So yes, it's the end of day one. Thank you very much to everyone that has been with us on YouTube all together live, and also thank you everyone for seeing the recordings. If you're gonna see the recordings instead of being here live, the recordings are gonna be on the STACS Connected, and I think on the STACS website as well. Is that right, Ian? Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think Brendan will work his magic in the background, and they'll be posted everywhere.
They'll be posted everywhere, together with all the links and probably the slides, with all the resources. And we are gonna be back tomorrow, Tuesday, and also on Wednesday. We've got the Euros going on. We've got lots of things going on, but stay with us. And we're much more fun. I think we are.
Excellent. So thanks very much, folks, and good night, and we'll see you at another STACS event soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Lovely to be with everyone.
you.